What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about kayak materials. Behind me I have 3 boats that are completely different manufacturing processes, and we're going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each one, as well as some other things you might find out there on the market. So first thing we should talk about is, why do materials matter to you, the consumer, the end user? Well, depending on your style of paddling, choosing the right material is going to either give you a great experience on the water or potentially a big headache on the water. Each material has a different kind of impact strength, abrasion strength, as well as overall performance advantages. So there's different materials for different styles of paddling. So we're going to start off with polyethylene. This is rotomolded polyethylene. They do make a few different polyethylene products. You can have thermoformed polyethylene, similar to like a Pelican or maybe a Bic. But today in particular, we're going to be talking about rotomolded polyethylene. This is a great way to build a kayak. This is probably the most common style of kayak you'll see out there on the market. And basically what it is you have a mold, it's a clamshell. They pour a bunch of plastic pellets in there, they close the mold, they jam it into an oven, and it rotates, it goes up and down, expanding that plastic all around to the edges. Then they pop it out of the mold, let it cool, and the end product is a beautiful kayak. The advantages to this process is it's fairly efficient. It doesn't take too long. They can mold usually 4 kayaks at a time. It produces a heavy-duty, robust kayak that can take a nice impact, that has pretty decent abrasion resistance, holds up to rough and tumble use. You'll see a lot of polyethylene boats in the whitewater world, boats that are going to be taking impacts, that are going to be coming down off rapids, onto rocks. That's where the polyethylene really shines, because it just has great impact strength. It has a ton of flex in the material. It's a soft material, so you'll lose plastic as you hit rocks, but it's not going to want to break. So overall, out of all the boats we're talking about, this is going to be the strongest and most durable. The downside to polyethylene is it's going to be a little heavier. This boat is the heaviest one of the 3. And the other downside is the abrasion. So polyethylene is actually a fairly soft material. And as you're going over rocks, you're going to leave little curls of plastic behind. If you're dragging this across the ramp, wearing down that keel. Nowadays, a lot of kayaks have like a little replaceable keel that's made out of like a much harder plastic. And that's why. It's because polyethylene in general is a soft material. So I think about a cheese grater. If I were to take a cheese grater to it, this is going to wear out a lot quicker than, say, a thermoformed ABS plastic boat. So next up, we have thermoformed ABS plastic. The leader in this, in my opinion, is Eddyline Kayaks. They make an incredibly clean, incredibly well-made, dialed-in thermoformed kayak. They range from 10-foot all the way up to 16-foot sea kayaks. So there's a lot of different things you can do with it. Just like rotomolded, you can have sit insides, sit on tops. The thing about thermoform is you can get a lot more definition in the whole design, a lot more definition in the deck because of how it's made. So in this particular case, you have a male mold and then a sheet of plastic that's heated up. The sheet of plastic comes down and the mold lifts up and it's vacuum formed. And then it just seals this boat around the mold and creates a perfect deck. And then they do the same thing with the whole mold comes up, the sheet comes down, and it creates a mold. So now you have 2 parts that are then glued together with this seam right here. So that's why you'll have the different colors, is you have a hole, you have a deck, and it's glued together. They get glued together with methyl methacrylate, which is basically a plastic welder, and it creates a super, super strong seam. If this kayak ever breaks, it will not break on a seam. A lot of people are concerned about that when something's glued together, but it's bonded so well that it will never come apart. But the great thing about thermoform is the advantages of lightweight and abrasion resistance. So again, there's different kinds of wear on a kayak. There's impact and then there's abrasion. And most flat water paddlers or touring paddlers, their biggest thing is abrasion. Coming up on land, glance and blow style impacts. The thermoform plastic has quite a bit of flex before it'll break. So if you're just coming over the top of a rock, sliding over a rock, it'll actually bend and flex and you'll feel the rock underneath you, but it's not going to want to break the material. It's a lot stronger than what people think. And the nice thing about it is it's very, very dense. So your occasional running up on shore or running into a rock, it's not going to leave those deep gouges. Remember when I talked about the cheese grater effect? Well, this is a lot denser material and it's going to remove a lot less material if you were to run a cheese grater across it. This is actually a demo boat that's been around for a season. You can look at the bottom, you can see the scratches, but there's not deep gouges. Whereas if we went and looked at a polyethylene boat, you would see a lot more deep gouges in the boat. The other thing to talk about with thermoform, and we'll talk about it with composite, is the repairability aspect. When you crack a polyethylene boat, you can weld it, but you're trying to weld polyethylene, which is a very difficult process and oftentimes creates a weak area. Whereas on a thermoform boat or a composite boat, you can actually add materials, add fiberglass, and reinforce it and make that area stronger than it was before the repair. Other advantages to thermoform boats is the overall lightweight. It's significantly lighter than a polyethylene boat. If we were to compare two similar boats, like say a Aventura 12.5 that weighs about 65 pounds versus a Skylark weighs about 41 pounds. So over 20 pound savings for a very similar style of kayak, just based on the materials alone. The other advantage to the thermoform is it's going to cut. It's a lot slicker in the water, which means it just doesn't grab as much water. It wants to move through the water. Plus it's lighter weight. So when you paddle it, you just feel the acceleration. And then when you stop paddling, you notice the glide a lot more than you would on a polyethylene boat. So thermoform works for a lot of different people, but it doesn't work for everyone. Basically, my saying is if you have to wear a helmet when you kayak, this isn't the boat for you, because that means you're potentially taking impacts, whether it be whitewater or sea kayaking in the ocean, rock gardening. If you have to strap on a helmet, this probably isn't the boat for you. That's where rotomolded polyethylene comes in. That'd be the choice for you. But if you're looking for something fast, efficient, and lightweight to load and unload, this is a great option. So when we were talking about rotomolding, I mentioned how efficient and easy they were to make. Thermoform kayaks take quite a bit longer to mold, as well as to build, put the pieces together, install all the parts. So it's going to be a more expensive kayak to purchase. You know, rotomolded kayaks like this one here, you can expect to spend anywhere from $500 on the low end box store up to maybe $1,500 to, you know, some kayaks nowadays even $1,700, $1,800 for a like model rotomolded kayak. Obviously fishing kayaks are rotomolded, they can go up even more, all the way to $4,000, $5,000, whatever. Whereas thermoform starts at around, you know, $1,300 to $1,500 and then goes up to $2,600, $2,800, in that range. You know, you could probably find some that are a little more expensive, maybe some that are a little cheaper, but that's the rough idea. Is you're going to spend, you know, 20 to 30% more on a thermoform boat to get the advantages of the lightweight, the efficiency, and the manufacturing process. Lastly, we're going to talk about composite kayaks, which I have a soft spot in my heart for. I've always loved composite kayaks because of the overall feel, the performance, the legacy. Like when you buy a composite kayak, it's sort of a lifelong kayak, and you're going to baby it and you're going to treat it well and you're going to spend some money on it. So let's take a look at my boat. It's the S16 by Stellar. So this is my personal favorite style of boat. There are millions of different ways to build composite kayaks. There's fiberglass, there's carbon Kevlar, there's heavy duty, like robust composites. And then there's composites that are built to be super lightweight and fast, like surf skis. The beauty of composite kayaks is that you can get kind of any shape you want. Formula One race cars to airplanes are all done with carbon, fiberglass, and composites. So building a kayak out of it is very, very cool because you can get the best of all the worlds. You can get hard impact strength. You can get incredibly lightweight. You can get super, you know, wild designs like this S16 here with these big cutouts and, you know, all these neat features. The other thing you get with the composite is you get something that's repairable. So if anything were to ever happen to my composite boat, I can repair it with the same materials, the same epoxies, the same fabrics, and just add that to the existing fabrics and create a strong, durable, lifelong repair. And when we're talking composites, you can really get any layup you want. My buddy Ethan has an IXP North Star canoe that's an absolute hammer of a boat that you can just beat on, and that material is built to take an impact. It's built to flex, it's built to move, and it's built to, you know, kind of last a lifetime. Now at the opposite end of that spectrum, maybe a surf ski that's built out of a Excel layup from Stellar, which is all carbon fiber. It's very stiff, it's very strong, but if it takes a hard impact, it's kind of going to want to explode, you know, because it's not meant for that. So there's a lot of differences in composites, and it's really just about finding the right layup for your style of paddling. With that, let's talk about my personal boat. We'll use this as an example. This is a multi-sport layup from Stellar, and what this does, it has a fiberglass deck. Fiberglass typically is going to be a very strong way to make a kayak, but not necessarily the lightest way. So what Stellar does is they do fiberglass on the deck and then carbon Kevlar on the hull. The advantage to the carbon Kevlar, especially in this particular boat, they use a flexible resin, is this thing can take an impact. It can have a lot of flex without wanting to spider crack. Whereas a fiberglass deck, you get a lot of stiffness, but if you were to take an impact, the gel coat is the weak link. The outside layer, like basically it's a paint job of the boat, can want to crack and spider crack. And you see this a lot on, you know, older kayaks or older sailboats, anything that's fiberglass and older, you can see those little spider cracks starting to happen. A composite boat in general is a little bit more to maintain and to keep up, but again, it's a lifelong boat. Whereas a polyethylene boat, there's not a whole lot of maintenance. 303 it, wash it down. The biggest thing with polyethylene is sun exposure. So you want to keep 303 on it, which is like a sunblock, basically a protectant that you can wipe down the kayak. It's probably only going to last you 10 to 15 years before it gets kind of sun brittled. Maybe it'll start oil canning on the bottom, or it gets a little white and brittle. If you've ever seen like a playground that's been there a long time, like the top of the play structures might be white and kind of crispy. That's what happens to polyethylene in the sun. Eddy line, on the other hand, the thermoformed boats, they're actually really good with sun because they have a UV acrylic cap on the outside of all the plastic. The only thing that can really get you is if you don't use a cockpit cover and sun is constantly beating down in your cockpit, it will reflect up and it'll yellow the inside of the boat. So definitely if you have an eddy line, go ahead and throw a cockpit cover on it. It'll keep it looking new. The other thing you need to know about the eddy line is you don't want to use abrasive materials if you're cleaning it. You know, if you use like an acetone, that'll eat away at the finish. So you want to use like alcohol. A Mr. Clean Magic eraser works pretty good, although if you're too abrasive with that, it'll actually take off some of that material too. But in general, water, soap, and a little bit of alcohol, you can keep your eddy line looking new. I know some people use 303 protectant. You can use it on the hatch. You can use it on the outside of the finish, but it doesn't really make a huge difference on that boat. Composite boats, basically it's just soap it, water it. If you want to, you can buff it like you would a car. You know, I've had some older kayaks, like 20-plus-year-old kayaks that I've bought used, stripped all the deck lines off and used a really light compound and a buffer and then buffed it out and make it look new. And that's kind of one of the things I love about composite kayaks is, you know, this one's brand new, basically it's a year old, but I have kayaks in my fleet that are 20-year-old kayaks that are still really cool, funky designs that can live on because of the material. Whereas a polyethylene boat that's 20 years old, it's probably going to be all scratched up, warped up, and beat up. So I guess the question might be, why would somebody spend all the extra money to buy a composite kayak? Because they are expensive. They're all handmade, one at a time. It's an extremely intensive process. I did a walkthrough at Sterling Kayak Shop, and I think he said he spent 40 hours building a composite kayak. Whereas a rotomolded kayaks, you know, they could do 4 to 6 in an afternoon, not that big of a deal. Why somebody would buy a composite kayak is they're looking for the best performance. They're looking for the stiffest, fastest, sleekest, lightest boat that they can get. Or for folks that want a car top. You know, Stellar has a lot of small kayaks like the Compass or the S12 that weigh 30 pounds. I mean, you can just pick them up with one hand, put them on your rack, and then when you're on the water, the speed, the acceleration, and the glide are significantly better than, say, a thermoform or a rotomolded kayak. The downside is you gotta baby them a little bit. My dad would always say, boy, you gotta get your feet wet. Like if you're gonna get in the kayak, you gotta get in the kayak from the water. You don't wanna like slam it on the beach and just run it in. You wanna be a little bit more gentle, a little bit more caring. This is a lifetime product that you wanna keep looking new. So you do have to baby it a little bit. And you know, personally, I like to keep a cockpit cover on mine. If it's gonna be up on top of my truck for a long season, I'll run a Danu cover that covers the whole thing. So I am babying it a little more because it's a, you know, it's a $4,000 kayak as opposed to a $700 or maybe a $2,000 kayak. So if you're looking for a kayak that's extremely heavy duty, that you can be rough and tumble with, throw it in the back of the truck, let your friends borrow it, or maybe it's just your first kayak, you don't want to spend a bunch of money, rotomolded kayaks are going to be the kayak for you. Now, if you've already had a kayak and you're looking for something higher performance, or maybe you're getting your first kayak, but you want something lighter weight, nicer paddling, I can't recommend thermoform kayaks enough. I really feel like the meat of the market should be thermoform because of their speed, their lightweight, their ease of use off the water. You know, when I'm at a demo beach and I can get somebody to hop out of a rotomolded kayak and into a thermoform kayak, their enjoyment of that experience is going to be more. They're going to like it more. The disadvantage being you're going to spend a little bit more money to get that performance. But if money's not the issue and you're looking for better paddling performance, I think the Eddy line or Delta or Hurricane, they're all good ways to go. Now, if money's really not the issue and you want the best performance and you want the lightest weight, or maybe you're in your 60s and you want to paddle till you're 80 and you want the lightest thing you can get, or you just really care about how a boat performs. You want something light and one with your body. Composite materials. Jump in a fiberglass boat, jump in a carbon Kevlar boat. There's lots of different stuff out there nowadays, but try it out, see what you think. For me, I think it's the ultimate in performance. When I spend my time on the water for myself, I'm usually always in a composite kayak if I'm doing any sort of flat water. There is just something to the feel of a composite boat that you cannot get in thermoformed or in rotomolded plastic. So I hope that video was helpful for you guys. If nothing else, I hope it was entertaining. I think materials are a super interesting subject and I just scratched the surface. There's so much more to know. So if you have any questions, leave those down below in the comment section. I'm more than happy to produce more videos or answer more of your questions if you have specific ones. So thanks so much for watching, you guys. Until next time, this is Dan wishing you happy paddling. We'll see you on the next one. I'm on the run, I've got no
Took what you treasure, and I'm never gonna